No one is telling you the real reason of why Israel attacked Iran, and that is on purpose.
Israel has launched what it calls a preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear facilities.
But this war didn't start this week, last month, or even last year. It's been a war 30 years in the making, not with bombs, but through narrative and the unrelenting obsession of one man.
In the case of Iran's nuclear plans to build a bomb,
time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
So why did Israel attack Iran now? And what is the real reason it's been warmongering for the last 3 decades? The answer lies in control, diversion, and the grand plan to remake the region to ensure Israeli superiority and dominance. It is 1992. In Jerusalem, a younger Benjamin Netanyahu was a member of Knesset for the Likud party. He makes what seems to be an outlandish prediction. Iran will have a nuclear bomb in the next 3 to 5 years. But at first, no one takes him seriously. Meanwhile, the Israeli Labor Party is in the midst of negotiating a peace deal with the Palestinian Liberation Organization. The right wing is terrified of that prospect because it would ruin their vision for Greater Israel. They wanted to spoil the talks, so they resort to fear-mongering to divert attention from peace with the Palestinians to a bigger, more dangerous enemy. And Iran is the perfect boogeyman.
As head of the conservative Likud party, Netanyahu himself became the face of the opposition to Oslo.
But when that didn't work, the Israeli right assassinated Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Since then, Netanyahu and the Israeli right have utilized that tactic over and over and over again.
Iran lied. If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Always the same thing. Iran is a few years away from a nuclear weapon, which as we know has been a lie. But what explains this obsession with Iran? Well, there are 3 reasons. 1. Control. The psychology of Israeli society is built on fear. And the surest way to shift public opinion in Israel is to tell them they're on the brink of annihilation. And in the case of Iran, it's nuclear annihilation.
Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime.
Netanyahu has carefully and deliberately crafted the narrative since the 1990s, weaponizing the Israeli psychology of fear and the idea of a second Holocaust, and to paint himself as the protector of the Jewish state from impending doom.
A targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival.
It has been this way in which he unites Israeli society behind him and gets them to fall in line. His government is about to collapse? Iran. Corruption charges? Iran. Two-state solution with the Palestinians? But Iran. And this brings me to the second reason, diversion. Netanyahu has consistently manufactured the threat of Iran's nuclear bomb to divert the world's attention from Palestine, the same way he tried to do in the early 1990s. See, Netanyahu is the longest-serving Israeli prime minister ever and has been in power for the majority of the Oslo negotiations era. He has done everything in his power to destroy the prospect of a Palestinian state. And during his tenure, Israel has only colonized more Palestinian land and constructed a system of apartheid in Palestine between the river and the sea. And here's the thing, Netanyahu would almost refuse to speak about Palestine and Palestinians. Instead, he would focus on Iran at his speeches in the UN in interviews with the media and in his meetings with world leaders. This was deliberate. He wanted everyone to forget about Palestine, to relegate the Palestinian cause to a minority issue within Israel, rather than a people fighting for liberation and self-determination. So he needed a credible and scary enemy to rally the world behind, and that was Iran. This failed when October 7th and the genocide in Gaza made Palestine the #1 issue in the world. And recently, a tide was turning as Gaza was being starved. Countries that are some of Israel's closest friends were now being critical. There was talk about recognition of a Palestinian state, and even the talk of sanctions. But that's when Netanyahu did what Netanyahu does best. A few days later, Israel attacks Iran, and these countries are now trumpeting the same old-age line: Israel has a right to defend itself. And Netanyahu's tactic of diversion worked. Attention went from Gaza to Iran.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion.
But see, there's more to all of this, and that's the third reason: domination. In 1996, a group of American neoconservative advisors, at the behest of Netanyahu, put together a plan to remake the Middle East and driving regime change in every country that was hostile to Israel. This plan was called the Clean Break, and the list included countries like Libya, Iraq, Syria, and Iran. Through the powerful Israeli lobby in the US and connections to factions in the American deep state, Netanyahu and Israel have directed American foreign policy for the last 30 years, dragging the US from one war after another.
Well, it's part of a 30-year effort. This is Netanyahu's war to remake the Middle East. It's been a disaster. It continues to be a disaster.
We've seen a clear pattern emerge. Every leader that was deemed a threat to Israel has eventually been removed through war, sanctions, or regime change. Now that Gaddafi, Saddam, and Bashar were out of the way, Iran was the last country standing. Because it is the strongest opposition to Israel's hegemony in the region and the pursuit of the Zionist dream of greater Israel, with a weakened Hamas and Hezbollah and a supportive Trump administration. Netanyahu saw his opportunity to finish his grand plan: topple the Iranian regime. This would secure Israel as the preeminent power in the region once and for all. Following the Iraq playbook and the manufactured threat of Iran's nuclear bomb, Netanyahu and Israel attacked. And now we're watching this war unfold that is in reality a disguise for regime change and Israeli supremacy in the region. So what now? It's important to point out that Israel never had the military capacity to destroy Iran's nuclear program or effect regime change. They always needed the US. Their strategy is to entice the US and the Trump administration to join the fight so they can finish the job.
Nuclear facilities are deeply buried, hard to target. You cannot believe that you can destroy them all.
And it's a big question whether or not the United States should be involved in this, especially in places like the facilities in Fordow and others.
So what do you say to the US right now and President Trump?
I think it will be in everybody's interest.
The main pressure on Trump so far has been domestic. His MAGA and America First constituency are anti-foreign wars and are against the US joining Israel's war against Iran. There are many scenarios of how this can play out, and a lot of them are contingent on the US and other powers in the region. But whichever way this goes, it will be consequential in shaping the future of the region. But in the meantime, this is what we know. Netanyahu will not stop until his obsession with Iran is materialized. We are seeing him and his Western allies manufacture consent to carry out a plan that's been 30 years in the making. Don't fall for it.